Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to this channel. That way, when I release more videos like this, you'll get notified. Hey, it's Betsy Jordyn. And if you are interested in taking the best of your career and turning it into your own business, you are going to love this conversation I am going to have today with my friend and colleague and former client and current client, Lori Smith. So welcome, Lori.
Thank you so much, Betsy. I'm really happy to be here with you.
So let's talk about what you are like, what your business is all about, and tell me a little bit about your background for those who don't
Sure.
know you.
Okay. So I actually worked in a corporate environment for a good 20 plus years. I come from an accounting and finance background. And throughout my career, I really found myself working in all sorts of non typical accounting roles, typical finance roles. I really used my finance and accounting skill set to springboard into other other skill sets and other parts of the business that took my finance knowledge and applied them to the operations side of the business. And the one thing that was consistent throughout my career is that I was always working in a matrix organization that had multiple moving parts, lots of tentacles into different parts of the business. And my role was typically right in the middle, trying to manage all the moving parts and make sure that all of the parts were working together in the most efficient and best possible way. So when I decided to start my own business, I think what you and I spent a lot of time talking about was what was it that really made me tick? What made me enjoy what I did for so many years? And the truth was, it wasn't the finance and accounting. While that was a wonderful foundation to have because it gave me a better understanding of how the business ran and what was important to the bottom line of a business, I was able to really hone in on that matrix part and the fact that I had the ability to get all the parts working together more efficiently and better. And I decided that that's what I wanted to build my business based on. So I have had my consulting business now for what's been a full 2 years. I can't believe it's been 2 years. June marked my 2 year anniversary of starting Lori Smith Consulting. And what I've actually been able to do, which makes me so happy, is I've been able to use my network to identify clients that were a perfect fit for me. And I was able to take all the skills that I had developed over my years working in a corporate environment and give the best of that to my clients. So that's really what I'm doing now, and it's been great.
That's awesome. I would love to go a little bit back in time and talk
Mhm.
about when you were in finance. Like, how did you, a lot of people get stuck in a particular
Yeah.
functional area. How is it that you were able to see that my functional area is more of a complementary expertise that I could apply and I could start moving out of just my functional area when you're still an employee?
The one thing that I found and I saw very frequently was that people who were on the operational side of the business didn't have the insight into the financial aspects of the business as much as you would think, right? They were very good at what they were doing, but they didn't understand sometimes the bigger picture and the financial implications of decisions that were made. And for me, I understood the financial implications, yet, when I saw all the work that they were doing, it was interesting to me. So what I did was I was very fortunate to always find myself not just staying. I actually started in a pure finance role, but I moved into a department where I was their finance lead. And from there, I was able to take that and use the skills I had and show others what I actually had the ability to do. And they were like, you know what? I don't think you need to do as much finance. Let's move you more into this. And then it just kept on building and growing over time. But I always kept my tie to finance because it was a good way for me to bridge the gap between the operational aspects and the financial aspects.
So you sort of made up your own role when you were at
You know,
Wyndham.
I really did, and it's kind of funny you say that. I've had a couple people say that to me over the years. I had a very unique I created a very unique position for myself. And then I was able to take that position and apply it to different departments. I was in a corporate real estate function. I was in a real estate development function. I was in a sourcing function. So I always took what I had learned and the skills I had developed, and I just kept on moving around the organization and bringing it to a new group.
So I
So
think that there's something about entrepreneurship that could really set the stage for and entrepreneurship. Like when that was my background. That's how I did my whole career is I never really had a formal place on the org chart. I made up my own. Do
yeah.
you feel like having that entrepreneurship kind of mindset where it's like, hey, I really want to do this role. It's not formally on the org chart. Does it help you now as you are doing your business?
I think it definitely does because I think I've been able to take, all of the things that I learned at that point in time and apply them to how I'm helping clients. And quite frankly, many businesses don't have the ability to create those sorts of roles, right? I was very fortunate that I was in a company that did. But if you're looking at a smaller organization or a nonprofit, if they don't have the ability to do that, they very often would look to a consultant to say, hey, can you provide that different view, that different perspective? And that's actually what I've been doing for the clients that I have been able to work with over the past 2 years is give them that outside perspective.
Well, Lori, I think you're being modest, because I think that there is something about the fact that it's not just about do they have the resources or not. It's that you had that vision,
Hmm.
for that particular role. So this is
Yeah.
kind of interesting. Is so you've been doing what we wound up doing through your brand messaging and positioning all along with your career of saying, all right, I like this finance stuff. I understand the application to the business into operations, as well as I like corralling all these stakeholders. You did
Yes.
that in your career. So it's interesting is when you decided to leave Wyndham
Hmm.
and start your business. I remember the first conversations that we had, you were unclear on
It
how that
was.
would translate to a business, which is ironic. So let's go back in time and talk about when did you decide, you know what, I don't want to work in corporate anymore. I want to start my own business.
Yeah. So when I first found out that I was leaving Wyndham and I had to really make the big next step in my career of what was next, I tried to think about what was most important to me as a person, as a mother, as a wife, first. And that is the one thing I think about me that's the core of who I am, right? My family always comes first. And I always made my family come first throughout my career. But this was a life-changing event for me. And it was scary. And I had a lot of decisions to make about what did I want to do next. And the thought of going back into a corporate job was very scary for me. And the reason I think it was very scary was that because I had created such a unique role for myself, I knew it would not be as easy to join another organization and jump into as exciting and different of a role. I think, when I started looking at jobs, there was the typical finance jobs, and that wasn't of interest to me. So then I thought to myself, okay, what is it that I enjoy doing? And, I think as you and I started talking and as I started looking into myself to identify what I enjoyed doing, I think that's when I realized, what, I have to do something different. If I go back into another corporate job, number one, I'm going to be having to re educate people on what my skills are and my abilities are. I'm going to have to work my way back up. Wouldn't it be nice if I could do this on my own and go out there and bring my best skills to more than one company? And that's really what attracted me to becoming a consultant. And then the second aspect of it for me was my family, having the ability to be more flexible, to be more present, to, maneuver my schedule to what works for me and for them was a huge factor in my decision making.
So it was a lot of career control and lifestyle control as you wanted to be able to
Absolutely.
do it your way.
Yes, I wanted it. I wanted it all, right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's the whole point of doing this. What
Sure.
I love about what you're saying is that you had a vision for taking your career to the next level. Sometimes when
Yes.
people leave corporate, they wind up recreating their old jobs over and over and over again. And you're picturing, like, okay, this was great. I don't want to go backwards. I don't want to go back to a finance role.
Hmm.
I want to go next. And I want
Yes,
to do it in a way that works best for me.
exactly.
One of the things I remember we talked a lot about in the beginning, in our first initial conversations, is the pressure you got
Hmm.
from other people. Like, oh my God,
Hmm.
Lori, you're so great. Why don't you just go take a promotion in
Yeah.
another company as an executive? Why didn't you want to do that? Because that could have been a next level.
It could have been, and you know what? I still get those comments till today. There's the one or two who still call me and they ask me what I'm doing, and I try to help them understand what we just talked about, why it's so important to me. So I think I knew that that was not the direction I wanted to go. I think I had a very clear mind that going back into that setting was not the right next step for me at that time. Right. And I am not saying, in life, we have all kinds of changes that come our way, and I can't predict, 10, 15 years from now. But I can tell you that at this point in my life, I knew that this was something that I needed to try. I don't think we get many life-changing moments where you can truly say, like for me, having worked in that environment for 20 years, and I had a really good experience, I did. This switch that was flipped for me was like, okay, I can either take what's going on in my life right now and I can go down a path that's the same, or I can go down a path that's different and better. And you know what? If it doesn't work, I could always go down a different path. Right. So
Right.
I decided, I said, you know what? I'm going to try, because I don't think I'm going to get many chances like this and many opportunities like this, where, I have the ability to really make a big change. And I took it.
So one of the things that we talked about, or I talked about in a previous podcast, is the whole idea of confidence. I remember confidence was a big thing
Yeah.
that you and I worked through. And I think what I've identified, what confidence really is trusting yourself. And
Yes.
it feels like through some of the conversations, it wasn't like, oh, I'm so great, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, people are going to like me. It was just more like you got into a settled place of like, yeah, I trust myself. I trust myself
Mhm.
to learn the skills. I trust
Yeah.
myself to make the changes as I need to. And if it doesn't work, I trust myself to figure it out.
Mhm.
Is that accurate around your experience of how you cultivated confidence?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you don't have trust in your ability in your ability to do something, or in yourself, I think you're going to be a failure from the start. And I think that, I was very hung up on what other people thought. I'm not, and I think you and I talked a lot about that. There were definitely people who were like, so what is it you're doing? I don't
Yeah.
understand. Right. And it was almost frustrating at times, and I would try to articulate myself, and it was hard to do in the beginning. I mean, I even had to practice, and that's something we worked on together, practicing what my messaging was going to be, and explaining to people that, you know what, I'm not just a sourcing or procurement expert, because I did that for so many years of my career, or a real estate expert. I'm those things and then some. Right. I have a different skill set, which is can be applied to any industry for that matter. And I still have to remind people of that, because I worked in those industries for so long. It's very hard to get people to look at you differently. Um, but I think I had to have the trust in myself that I could do it before I could actually go out there and tell others that I could do it. So
I remember, I think it was you who said that somebody said to you, like, hey, when you're done with this little hobby, why don't
mhm.
you come over and work for me? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Was it you that that comment was?
Yeah, I think that, there's been a couple people in my from my past life who have moved on to new ventures as well. And they have said, hey, just like, I don't know if this is going to work for you. So if you need a job, let me know, so, but I'm happy to say that it is working right now. And, the one thing I will also say, I was thinking about my family, right? Because that's something I talked about earlier. I think the person I am now, not that I wasn't a good mother before, but I think I'm just much happier. I feel like it's amazing how, when you're doing the right thing, how much happier you can become. And just a little silly story, but my son, I was thinking about this yesterday. There's Kids Day every year at school, at different businesses. Well, every year, the company that I worked for had a huge Kids Day, and my older son always got to go, and my younger son was too little, and he never got to go. So a couple of years ago, all of his friends weren't in school because they were at Kids Day. And I said to him, oh, I'm sorry, buddy. If I was still working at the company I had been working at before, you would have been able to go to Kids Day. And he's like, oh, I'm okay missing Kids Day because you're home and I'm so much happier having you around all the time.
Oh,
So I
so it's
think
like
that's,
every day's kids' day for
yeah.
him.
So I think that's important. And he respects me for what I'm doing. He is interested in learning more about my business. They both are. So I think it's really something.
When I left Disney to start my business, a big part was that I had these two young kids at home, and we were just talking before we started recording, that my kids are getting ready to, they're 18 and 20.
Yep.
And this is one of those things, like I made a ton of mistakes, in my life,
Yeah.
and I haven't done everything perfectly, and I haven't done everything perfectly with my business. But the one mistake I didn't make was leaving corporate to be home with them,
Right.
because you
Right.
do get to be there for everything and you could decide. And I think
Hmm.
that's such a huge benefit, that I think that when people are on the crossroads, like, I think that's your point, is like, well, especially after everything that we all went through in the pandemic, you lost your
Absolutely.
mother-in-law, you
Hmm.
don't know how much time you have,
Sure.
so might as well just do this now.
Absolutely.
So we talked about the confidence part, because the two big things that you and I talked about in the very beginning when we started working together through your brand messaging and positioning was the clarity and confidence.
Hmm.
So I want to unpack what was in the way of clarity. And one of the things that we were talking about in a previous conversation is just the whole grieving process of leaving corporate. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit more around why that whole experience, what do you have to let go of in order to get, was that standing in your way of clarity? Actually, let me ask that question. And then can you talk about that grieving process a little bit more?
Yeah, no, I think that grieving is definitely the right word. I don't think people realize it, but when you leave something that you have done for such a long period of time, just like anything else in life, you grieve, right? And I was grieving the relationships that I had with people that I worked with and got to interact with on an everyday basis. I was grieving the fact that I was in, a really good place in my career. I had worked really hard and I had gotten to an executive level, which meant a ton to me. And I worked really hard to get there and to say, okay, I'm going to stop doing this. You're leaving behind something that you worked really hard to get to for many, many years. So I think I had to, and it took me a while. I had to go through that process, just like anything else in life. And I had to embrace what I was moving forward toward. And I had to look at the positives of that and say, okay, yes, I'm leaving behind these things, which were very important to me, and created really the foundation for what I'm going to do going forward. So I tried to look at it, and it took me time to get there, but I tried to look at it as the springboard for the next step and the good things that were ahead.
So I noticed in our conversations when we did our coaching calls, some of them were, like clicking and moving and easy for you. But when we did
Mhm.
hit these points around the grief, I also noticed you were very accepting of yourself when you had those feelings of grief. I didn't see any judgment,
Mhm.
and we were able to work through it. What do you
Yeah.
think you were able to have? Like, how did you get to a point of acceptance of the emotions that come with the grieving process?
I think I've watched in the past couple of years, like so many people, right? The whole world has changed. And I have watched so many people go through exactly what I went through. And I try to reflect on how I dealt with it to give them advice, right? My phone rang far too many times in the past year and a half with former colleagues and friends who were moving on and were in my position. They were in that grieving process and they wouldn't allow themselves to grieve in some sense, right? They were just like, well, it's time to move on. And, we're just trying to be so strong and move forward, which is how some people react. Um, but I said, you know what? It's okay to like take some time, like think about what it is that you want. Give yourself a moment to take it in and, really be true to yourself. Like I said before, it took me a while to get there. I was, sad is probably a fair word. I was
Mhm.
sad for quite some time. But I think that once I finally realized that there was something else out there for me and that I could do something different, I started to accept it. And it was okay if I was going to be upset and miss those things, but I tried to look forward and think about, the future. So,
I think you just hit the key word, acceptance. Like
mhm.
just getting to a point of acceptance, but you have to go through the sad to get to the acceptance. It doesn't
Yeah.
magically happen. Have
Mhm.
you seen people who are in a similar boat who have left their corporate job, started their business, and didn't go through the grieving process? And how do you see that affecting, their clarity on their business results? Actually, let me
Yeah.
back up before you answer
Mhm.
that question. Let's talk about how did accepting the grieving process help you get to that clarity that you were seeking in your what you want your business to be all about and get more excited about your vision.
Yeah. Well, I think that's exactly it, right? When you think about what it is that made what was making me feel bad, what were the things that I was afraid I was going to lose out on and miss? that was part of me saying, okay, but why am I going to miss those things? I'm going to miss them because they mean something to me. How do I take those things and use them to identify what my skills are and what my purpose is of what I want to now do in my business? So, an example, I just said to you, I was going to miss all the people, and I loved having that interaction with so many different people, and it was so diverse and different, and it kept me going. Well, great. I can take that and I can apply it to working with multiple different clients and getting to meet new people and do new things, and take that a step further. When I'm in a given company working with, different people, I can take the fact that I really enjoy getting all the parts working together, and I can work with all the different parts of a new organization and different companies. So I was able to take what it was that I was afraid I was going to miss and try and find a way to apply it to my business.
I do remember us having that conversation because I think that's when we landed on you want to work with a larger company that has a matrix organization. Like
Yes.
that, and that's where we really identified your niche, because there are a lot of matrix organizations, a lot of complex organizations,
Hmm.
and that they don't have somebody who provides that expert process, stakeholder point of view who can corral everybody around the priorities and what they need to do to grow their business. So it
Hmm.
sounds like that is what unleashed that particular part. And once you got clear on that, then it seems like at least half of your value proposition was clarified. Is that accurate?
I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
So, but what the other part of the clarity that we identified for you was that um, corralling the different types of people, and that was more your superpower. That your
Hmm.
finance abilities, your Six Sigma process abilities, all of those were a secondary gift to your primary gift, which is bringing that consensus. Do you remember what got you to that point of like, wow, that really is my superpower, and I didn't recognize it. That is my thing.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of the work that we did together, right? I think a lot of the questions that you would ask me as we worked together made me think differently. When I first started in this process, and I don't know if you recall our first conversation, but I called you up because we had worked together when you were consulting,
Mhm.
and I admired, your style and thought, wow, she's a consultant. She's, out there doing this on her own. I should pick her brain on how I could potentially do this myself, not knowing that you had transitioned your business because I hadn't reached out to you in such a long time. And I remember in that first conversation, I was actually sitting in the parking lot of my company because I hadn't officially left yet. And I remember just some of the questions you asked me really made me think differently. So to answer your question, I think that process of taking a step back, thinking about what it is that makes me happy as a person, what interests me as a person, or what I was able to use to say, okay, now how do I want to transform what it is that has interested me all of these years, and I didn't even realize I had created this little niche for myself, and now apply it to the business.
It's amazing. I mean, I do remember so many of those conversations, and you were so great to work with because, you were able to take just a little bit of information, you went and applied it, come back, and it's like, all right, now I understand this one. So the go slow to go fast approach really did work for
Yeah.
definitely someone like you. And you did do the emotional work as we did the
Hmm.
tactical work.
Yep.
So now to answer the question, if you would mind,
Mhm.
around what you observe in other people who don't go through the grieving process and how it affects their clarity on their business and what they're supposed to be about and what the consequences are.
I think what they do is they just jump too far ahead too quickly without giving proper thought to what it is that they're feeling, and then how they really can move forward and take the things that make them happy to apply to the business, right? And I know I've said that several times in this conversation, but if you don't take the time to truly grieve and give yourself time to properly think through this transformation that you're going through, and you and I always use the word transformation, it is, right? It's
Mhm.
you are transforming yourself, your career. um, and I think that it sets you off on the wrong path because you're not really clear on who it is you're trying to serve, and you're not really clear on what it is that you want to do for those that you hope to serve, right? And I think those are the two things that we spent a heck of a lot of time on, right? who is my ideal client and
Mhm.
what are the questions they're asking, right? Oh my gosh, you and I talked about that so many times. What is your ideal client asking, and what makes them feel like they need someone like you? And if you don't take the time to really think about that, then you set yourself up for, being off on a path where you don't have a definitive audience that you're trying to reach out to. And I think then you're just kind of lost a little bit out at sea, right? Putting your hands in so many different pots and not really sure what's going to take.
Well, I remember one of the big things that we had to get over was giving you confidence and validation that yes, companies are struggling with
Mhm.
misaligned stakeholders, and that's a big
Yes.
issue.
Yeah.
And it's definitely in your experience. I think it's interesting that that all the consultants that I work with, not all of them, but
Mhm.
several of the consultants that I work with who have an efficiency background also have a focus on the stakeholders and making sure the
Yes.
stakeholders are aligned. And it seems like it's still seamlessly coming together for you in your
Mhm.
business that you're doing right now with the clients that you're working with.
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think it's getting everybody working together, and then I think the second big thing that I like to focus on with my clients is making sure they're working on the right things. So so often, companies push more and more and more onto departments and individuals, and they feel like they've got so many different initiatives and things that they're working on all at one time, and they don't know where to begin. And the one thing that I really try to focus on is prioritization. What is most important? What is going to drive the bottom line? How do you focus on the things that are going to be the most impactful? And I think that's a second factor in how I define the business, because I think it's so important to big, small, I don't care how big your business is. Everybody should be working on the things that are going to be the most impactful and beneficial to their bottom line.
Yeah, so that's the big value that you're bringing to the table is I'm going to
Yeah.
help you figure out that one thing and get everybody on the same page so that we're not wasting time or money on the wrong
Yes.
things. We're investing all of our time, money, focus on the right things, and we're
Mhm.
sidestepping all of the conflict and all
Yes.
the other crazy stuff. So
That's
the
right.
stuff that you created as a role as an internal, almost like you were an internal consultant, you were able to recreate it and then some as an
Mhm.
external consultant. But it also sounds like you have some of your assignments that not only are you doing the work, but you're mentoring the next generation of people who are mini Loris who want to do the same
Mhm.
thing. Can you talk a little bit about how you've been able to go to that next level?
Yeah, no, I think the one really wonderful thing that I've been able to do, in particular with one of my clients right now, is get to work with someone who's a little bit newer in their career and have the ability to help them focus on different aspects of ways to look at a business and analyze a business. And that's something I've always truly enjoyed. I think even when I was working in a corporate environment, I found myself mentoring people when I didn't even realize it. Folks from other departments would come in, and I can think of one individual in particular who said to me, "I really think your job is interesting. I would love to learn more about it. Can we have lunch?" And I've watched that person, change over the years, and herself has had the ability to move into different roles. And I want to believe that it's been, because of some of those conversations that we had over lunch that hopefully influenced her. So I enjoy that now I'm doing that with my clients as well.
It's awesome. So
Mhm,
you were able to everything that you wanted to do and then some. You were able to get the control over your time. You got to spend the
mhm,
time with your kids. You get to have kids day all the time. Plus
mhm.
you get to work with clients that you love to work with and you have
Yes.
multiple clients. And now not only that, the mentoring side is coming to bear. So that's all
That's
really
right.
exciting.
It
So
is.
given all of these cool things that are happening, if you can go
Mhm.
back in time and talk to Lori, who just realized she was at that crossroads and she was trying to decide, should I leave or should I go? What would you say to that younger version of you?
Yeah, I think that I would tell myself that, it's okay to embrace change. I think, I had the same fear that so many other folks do who are contemplating starting their own business. Um, and I would want to tell myself that, it's okay to have fear, but I think it's also okay if things don't go perfectly. I don't want anyone to think that the past 2 years have been perfect, because there's always ups and downs, right?
You mean a whole
Um,
pandemic in the middle of your business
I know. Well, I was
launch?
going to say,
Something
yeah,
like
I
that.
launched right before a pandemic, so that doesn't make things easy. But I would have to say that, it's okay to have fear. It's okay. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. You're going to probably have good quarters, good years, bad quarters. Right. And, I find myself constantly talking to my husband about, hey, this is what my pipeline's looking like. This is what this is looking like. My wheels are always turning as to how I want to grow and develop the business. And, and he reminds me, and I have to remind myself, it's okay. Right. There's going to be good and bad.
Okay, so
Mhm.
Jen, my partner, who you
Mhm.
work quite a bit with
Yes.
on your marketing system, she would be like jumping up and down, or she
Yeah.
probably is as she hears you talk about like your pipeline, because you're not talking
Yeah.
about all like one-off tactics, you're talking about your pipeline.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you'd want to tell me about your experience of jumping into consulting business ownership? And I just didn't ask you the right question.
No, I think the last thing I would say is, and you did not tell me to say this. This is me saying this. I think you need someone to guide you. I don't think I could have done this without having you and Jen as a partner. And I truly mean that. And I thank you guys for all that you've done for me. Having someone to help me think about things a little differently, give me the steps that I needed to build the business. I have a former colleague who I've talked to numerous times, and he's trying to figure out his next step. And he was a little surprised by the fact back when that I moved down this path, and he said to me, you are a typical finance person, right? Is a little more conservative. It's just a stereotype, but it's the
Yeah.
truth. And he said, I just can't believe that you took this leap. And I said, yeah, I did it, but I did it methodically, right? So the conservative side of Lori did it methodically. And I did that by finding the right resources and partners to help me get there. I didn't do it on my own because what did I know about building a business? I needed someone to guide me. So I think that was such a critical part of this. And I would recommend that to anyone who's at those crossroads and trying to figure it out. Don't just throw some jello at the wall and hope it sticks. You need to be thoughtful about building your business and build it in a way that it's hopefully sustainable, right? That's my goal. I use that word sustainable all the time. My goal is to make this work. I'm not in it for a year. I hope to be in it for many years. So, I think building the right foundation is so critical.
Jen and I were talking about this the other day when we were talking about how you dial into your ideal client. And we were reminding ourselves like the people we love to serve are the ones who are the step-by-step people, because
Yes.
there's so many people out there who are thrilled to sell you a marketing technique here and there. Try this, try that, go on
Mhm.
LinkedIn, do this, do that. And that's like starts creating like our fight or flight, when we
Oh,
hear people
yeah.
talking about it. And we want to serve the kind of people who want the methodical, because we,
Mhm.
as consultants, we bring in good process to
Yes.
companies. That's how we help them grow, is by good process. You're a Six Sigma person. A
Mhm.
lot of our clients are process people.
Yes.
So we need to have process, because if you
Mhm.
don't trust yourself quite at the beginning, you could trust the process. And that's what I would
Absolutely.
tell my clients all the time. Like, well, you don't have to trust me yet. Just trust that I have a good process that I'm walking you through. And I think that
Right.
I must have replicated, the way I think about from an organization development standpoint to the whole business development standpoint is like, well, let's just do it this way, because it has
Mhm.
to be in a step by step.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that anxiety. So
Mhm.
let's talk about people who are looking for types of support like you provide. So I provide the step by step to entrepreneurs and consulting and coaching business owners like you, but you provide similar kind of support for large matrix organizations. Tell us a little bit about your business and how can people find you? And I know you have a lead magnet
Mhm.
or a great freebie. It's a resource on your website. So can you tell us how to find that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, LoriSmithConsulting.com is my website. And on there, you will find a prioritization tool, which I created, which is something that I referred to earlier in this conversation. It's essentially a way for individuals or companies or departments to gather and list and brainstorm around all the things that it is that their company is working on, all of their goals and objectives. And identify a way to prioritize what's most important to the business, what's actually going to drive profits, drive results. It's sounds very easy when I say it, but those are the sorts of questions that I think people really struggle with as they try and, work through their business plan. So it's just a simple little way for folks to gather their thoughts. And I think that in itself is a big win when you can get all your thoughts in one place.
What
And
format is
then,
it in?
I'm sorry, oh, it's in Excel.
Oh, yeah, so it's an interactive spreadsheet.
Yes, that's correct.
I did remember
Um,
that. So
mhm.
this is a tool that people can use where they could prioritize for themselves, but other people in their team could also participate. And I think you have formulas in there. So it's more
It
than
is.
just a bunch of questions. It's an interactive tool.
It is. It's a way to really weight and in the Excel spreadsheet, you have the ability to weight, all of the things you're working on and prioritize, what's most important to the business and what are all the things I'm working on and match those things up against each other through some formulas and analysis. So it's, something that I have used with clients and I find that it actually works really well. But it's a good way just to kind of dip your toe in the water and learn a little bit about some of the things that I bring to the table and can help my clients with. But as we've talked about, I think my focus really is on trying to help stakeholders and getting aligned, and then focus on the things that are most important to their business. So, you can check out my website. You can see some of those things, or contact me, and we could always talk further about what it is that your business is struggling with, and talk about how I might be able to help.
And who knows, maybe your next iteration of your business, it's going to be helping other consultants who need to master your stakeholder management skill
Yeah,
sets and your ability to corral a
I know,
bunch of
right?
people, because it's hard to herd those senior
Absolutely.
executive cats and get
Hmm.
them to do stuff and that you could do. So maybe that'll
Hmm.
be the next iteration.
There you
Well,
go.
it has been such a pleasure to catch up with you, to have this conversation. And I'm just so excited for the success that you've been able to create. I see it in your face, just the
Mhm.
peace that you have and the joy that you bring, and, just really leading with your passions. It's just such an honor. For those of you who are listening in, if you want to convert your career from a corporate type of environment and you want your own business and you want to have control over how you use your talents and how you monetize them and also create your total life priorities, definitely check out our services at betsydjordyn.com. It's Betsy Jordyn with a Y. Jen and I provide end-to-end services for systems thinkers like Lori and like you. If you're listening in and you resonate with Lori, that's what we're all about. So definitely check us out. And thanks for listening. And we'll see you in the next episode.